Okay. Um, so as I said before, I'm Stephanie Gandomi. I'm our assistant program director, and I'm responsible for a lot of our fieldwork placements. And I also do a lot of our healthcare principal and public health coursework here at Boise State University. And that's because I've done a lot of my professional work and teaching in insurance and health, the healthcare industry for many years. So I'm really looking forward to meeting a lot of you, looking at your applications, working with our admissions committee, and just excited that we are having this opportunity to be here with you today. So I'm going to pass over the torch now to Jennifer, and let's get started with our open house.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. So a couple of things that I just want to go over real quick. We are recording this, so if you do not want your image in the recording, I would have you toggle over to the little camera and turn that off. If you don't mind that your face might be viewed in the recording, then you can just leave it, but that's just up front. We wanted to let you know that that's going to be happening. The other thing is on the side, you'll see that there's a group chat. As we go through some of the material and answer some of the questions, you might have some follow-up questions. Feel free to type into that Zoom chat, but what I would ask is to try to make your questions as generalized as possible. If you have something very specific to you, very specific to your prereqs or your experiences, then I would encourage you to send us an email instead. We want to make sure that we're addressing as many questions as possible, and so keeping it more general will help more people get more information. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay. So let's move to the next slide. All right, so let's talk about the curriculum. I know there's a lot of questions about the curriculum. We have designed this program really as a cohesive experience for the students, meaning that each course was put in place because it builds on other material later on in the experience. And if you move to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about all of the different curriculum that's required in this program. So we are a 2-year or 21-month program. It is full-time. There isn't a part-time option at this time. So I get a lot of questions about whether being able to work and take the program at the same time is possible. It's possible, but I think it would be very difficult to have a full-time job and be able to contribute the time to this program. What we've calculated is it will be at minimum 30 hours per week commitment just to the program, and that includes the classwork, the homework assignments, the different projects, the clinical rotations that happen in the second year. So all of those different things are how we came up with that number. So thinking about having at least 30 hours a week dedicated to this program, it doesn't seem very likely that a full-time job would be available, at least right now as it's structured. So with online courses, we decided to go with a 7-week session model. That means instead of you taking 5 classes or 6 classes over 14 weeks, you would take 2 to 3 courses over 7 weeks. So it's a little bit compressed, but it also is concentrated. The first couple of courses are really designed to give you the foundational knowledge that you'll need to be able to be a genetic counselor. And so we have some of the heavy science courses in there. We've got some principles of human genetics, clinical genetics courses, but we also have some courses there meant to support you. We have a wellness course in the first semester. We also have some counseling classes. So these are just designed to give you that foundational knowledge. And then starting in the summer of that first year, which we're now calling the second year, you would start your clinical rotations. And so that's where fieldwork comes in. We'll talk a little bit more about fieldwork in a moment, so let's just keep focused on the curriculum. So the format of each of the lectures in all of the courses are varied, but we do try to keep some consistency among the courses. Typically what would happen is the material is released on a Friday, and that can be in the form of videos. It might be PowerPoint presentation, readings, chapters out of a book, YouTube videos. So you would access all of that content Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And then typically our due dates are going to be Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. So something would be due on one of those days. That could be a quiz, it could be a problem set, it could be a homework assignment, it could be a larger project. And we do try to integrate a lot of collaborative learning into our program. We want the students to be learning from each other as well as learning from us. And so there might be some small group work, partner work, there's discussion boards where you can learn from each other and hear about each other's experiences. We tend to be mostly asynchronous, meaning you can access the content at your leisure, at your own pace, but we do have a couple of synchronous sessions built into some of the courses, so all of you could get together at once, and it won't be more than 4 a semester because we know managing those schedules will be difficult. But we do want you to get to know your other students. We want you to be able to rely on them, get support from them, encouragement, learn from them. So we've developed a lot of interactive learning into the program. You'll be learning from us, you'll be learning from each other. We have guest lecturers from all over the country who are specialists in genetics and genomics. So there's a lot of collaborative learning. We do have 4 proctored exams that are required in the program. These are primarily in the heavy science classes. These proctored exams are things that you do at home with your video camera. So we would have somebody at Boise State who would be watching you take your exam on your camera. And so there are 4 of those over the course of the program. At the end of the program, we do have a required ABGC test exam. This is a practice exam for the boards. So all genetic counselors need to pass a boards exam in order to practice. This is a practice exam, so it's preparatory for you to learn about your test-taking skills and maybe some gaps in knowledge before you go into the real boards exam. And that happens after you graduate, usually when you're employed. Let's see. The advantages to having an online program, I think, are that we have a lot more flexibility. We don't have as much flexibility as perhaps if you were in a part-time program, because we do have required content and readings that has to be consumed at a certain time period so that you would be able to demonstrate your knowledge in some of those activities, whether that's by taking a quiz or doing an assignment. So there is some flexibility on when and where you access the content, but it does have to be done regularly on a weekly basis. The other advantage to online learning is all of the interactions you have with your classmates are intentional. We were very thoughtful about putting together activities that would help you learn and grow. We didn't want you to be doing a lot of busy work just for the sake of doing that. We wanted it to be applicable to what you'll be doing in a real life experience. So I think having that online access is going to be easier for some people to be able to take these classes, maybe continue having a part-time job, managing other aspects of their life. We obviously are an online program, so one of the things that we're going to need students to have is a computer, a video camera. We usually recommend a high-speed internet access. We don't have any specialized programs at this point. As a Boise State student, you would be using the Google Suite that has a variety of different document sharing options, cloud services, and video conferencing. We also have the learning management system called Blackboard. If you're not familiar with that, that's just what we use to upload our classes, where you'll be uploading all of your homework assignments and receiving grades. All right, I think I've covered most everything on the curriculum. So moving on to the fieldwork. So as I said, fieldwork occurs in the second year. There are 3 semesters that require fieldwork: summer, fall, and spring. And these fieldwork courses are actually 14-week courses rather than the 7-week courses for some of the other didactic learning. The reason is that the 14 weeks allows us to give you more flexibility in how you access your fieldwork or your clinical rotation. So all genetic counselors, in order to take their boards exam, would need to have 50 core cases. These are cases where they participate participated in at least 3 different activities related to genetic counseling discipline. In order to do that, you have to be face-to-face with a patient, with a supervisor, to be demonstrating some of those skills. So in your clinical rotations, you'll be working with practicing genetic counselors, gaining those counseling skills, understanding what it takes to see patients, to help patients. You'll be documenting all of those encounters in a system that we call Typhon. But essentially what you would need to work out with Stephanie, who's our fieldwork coordinator, as well as the clinical supervisors, is when you go. We have what's called core clinical network sites, where we have legal agreements. In order to send students to any of the clinical sites, there needs to be a legal agreement in place between Boise State and that clinical rotation site. And so we have core clinical sites that we have already established those legal agreements with. You can go online to our website to see the listing of them, but they are primarily in the Pacific Northwest. So we have sites in Idaho, Alaska, Northern California, Montana, Oregon, and Washington. And so from those sites, you would be able to select where your 3 rotations occur. You do need to have a variety of different experiences. So we want you to see prenatal patients, pediatric, adult patients, as well as any kind of specialized care patients that clinics might be seeing. So in order to see all of those different patients, we'll need to be very careful about planning and mapping out your clinical rotation so that you can get enough of these cases and enough of those experiences that you would then be able to take your board's exam. In each of the 3 rotations, you will have a minimum requirement of 200 hours on site. You can break that 200 hours into whatever chunks make sense to you. You could front end it, back end it. You could try to do 40 hours a week. Whatever works for you and that clinical supervisor, you're able to work with those 14 weeks to get your 200 hours. And you would need to do that each of the 3 semesters as you would be attaining all of those skills and getting your clinical experiences in the varieties that we've described. Students definitely get to participate in how those clinical rotations are mapped out with Stephanie. As soon as you matriculate into the program, she will be in touch with you to talk about what makes sense for your schedule and your life plan and the other things you have going on. So if it makes sense for you to go to Alaska first or Alaska last, we can look at some of those different things that make sense for you. We also have telehealth rotations that are available. Unfortunately, because of our standards and our accreditation requirements, we're only allowed to have a select number of cases that are by telehealth. The rest do have to be face-to-face. But we do feel like telehealth is a very important skill. It's the way our profession is going in terms of delivering care, so we want you to have some experience doing that too. And yes, there are some courses that will be taken while you're in your fieldwork experience. There's a couple of counseling classes and professional issues classes that you'll be taking. In addition, in the 2nd year, we do have a capstone project. This is a research-based project or an application-based project where you'll be looking at a question or an unanswered issue in genetic counseling. Then we would be assigning some sort of a research project to you that you would be building that up and then presenting at the end, just like you would for any other master's degree. So you'll be doing that in conjunction with your clinical rotations. And we have a question on the chat. If we weren't from those areas, we would have to travel and be in those states to do the clinical rotations. That is correct. You will have to travel to where we have clinical rotation sites. We will be gathering information about what kind of housing, student housing might be available for you, but Stephanie will definitely be in touch with trying to help coordinate all of those different pieces. Can you help us get legal agreements in local locations? So you really can't help us. That's something that we have to send through the general counsel through Boise State. It is usually anywhere from 8 to 12 months for us to get new legal agreements established. It's not something that we would like to do as this is our first year. It's something that we would look at doing as we grow and get bigger, but as of right now, we'd like to keep it with the core clinical networks that we currently have. Stephanie, do you have anything to add to that?
I want to add to that too. It's becoming even more difficult because, for example, I live in Northern California myself. And even in Northern California, which is actually not even that far away from Boise, Idaho, what I'm finding in Northern California, where, for example, there isn't even, so we have two issues. One is there's not even actually a local genetic counseling program in my current area. There's one in the Bay Area, but that's even pretty far away. So we have two things. One is we have to be careful that we are not necessarily taking rotation sites away from other students or other programs that currently exist, because they need to be able to train their students as well. So that's one thing we have to be aware of. And then two, we're noticing that there are medical schools, and even in my current area right now where I live, there are certain medical schools and institutions, even if they don't have a genetic counseling program, that certain hospital systems we're finding will only contract with certain medical schools, and they won't even talk to Boise State. So I reached out to a few medical centers here in my local area, and I said, hey, would you contract with Boise State? And there were some genetic counselors that work for them, and they said, we will not even talk with Boise State because we will only contract with schools that have medical centers. So even if there was a genetic counselor willing to see students, they may not even necessarily be willing to get a contract in place, and it's super complicated. So for example, there was one center we were working with that said they weren't even willing to get a contract in place at all. So it's very complicated. It's not as easy as it looks. And so it's not, it's not something that we can do quickly and overnight. So I'd love to say yes to that, but I can honestly tell you that it's not something that we're going to be able to quickly turn around in your local area. There's possibilities in some circumstances where maybe there's an emergency situation, and there's a community practice where it's not affiliated with a large institution and there's nobody else using that center. Maybe, but I cannot make any guarantees at all. We'd have to explore it. But if there's somebody who's not willing to sign that contract, I cannot guarantee that. So, there's a lot of caveats that come with those situations.
And unfortunately, we're bound by the ACGC standards. So you do have to have the majority, the large bulk of your clinical experiences face-to-face. We're hoping that that changes in the future, but for right now, 95% of it has to be face-to-face. All right. Any other questions before I move on to admissions? Okay, wonderful. All right, so I know there's a lot of questions about admissions. So as a genetic counseling program, we do participate in the national match system. The national match system is something that the genetic counseling programs went to last year. So last year was their first time doing it. What happens is we are able to rank the applicants that we interview, and those applicants are able to rank the programs where they interview at. Those two lists are combined into a computer network system that is then matching the top rated students with their top rated program. So on April 26, 2019, our match list will be released and we'll have those students assigned to our program. So since we participate in match, you need to have a national match number. That's seen at the National Match System website, and if you go to our website, we have a direct link to that. So you do need to have your match number first before you even go about applying to our program, and that's going to be true of all programs across the country. So that's the first thing that you'll need to do. The other thing you'll need to do is you'll need to get your official transcripts. We're seeing that that is taking a little bit longer for the graduate college to process official transcripts and get the GPAs calculated. So you'll want to get that in as soon as possible. The sooner the better. Don't wait to the deadline. Do it now. And then you'll also want to get your letters of reference sent in. That's another area where we're seeing we have all the pieces of the application except the letters of reference, so make sure the two people that you're asking to be a reference for you, send those in as soon as possible. So you'll need all of these different pieces in order to apply. I would say you should be applying with the match number and with all of those pieces ready to go, so be prepared to start doing that right away. And the sooner the better, because you don't want to wait to the last minute. In terms of the prerequisite classes, we have a list of the prerequisite classes on our website, so you can go and see what's required. I think the two classes that we're probably getting the most questions about are biochemistry and genetics. For all the science classes, you want to look for courses that a science major or a pre-med major would take. You don't want to be taking a survey class or a general class. You want to be taking usually an upper division biochemistry class. You don't necessarily need a lab, but you'll need a semester of biochemistry. Biochemistry usually has a number of prerequisites itself. Although we don't require organic chemistry, very often most biochem classes require OChem as well as a general chemistry with lab. So you'll want to look at that series of courses and make sure those things are completed before you get into your biochem class. The other thing that we need to see is we need to see your grade in biochemistry and we need to see your grade in genetics. The purpose of this is really to help us know where you are. Because we have 7-week courses, we do not have any time for remediation. So if you either aren't familiar with biochemistry principles or genetics principles, or if you struggled with them, we need to know about that up front because we need to be able to get you remediation before you jump into those courses. In clinical genetics 1 and 2, you're going to be learning essentially thousands of diseases, and we can't be teaching you basic biochemistry and why when that biochemistry goes wrong, somebody develops these kinds of features. We need to be teaching those syndromes as soon as possible. So it's really a protection for you. So what we've had a lot of people ask us is, can you be enrolled in one of those courses and apply? And we do need to see grades in both genetics and biochemistry. So if you're enrolled in a genetics or biochemistry class that starts January 10th and we close applications January 15th, there's no way we're going to be able to see any grades. So for those two courses, you cannot be subsequently applying and enrolled just because we need to see the grades. The other courses, statistics, psychology, those would be courses you could be enrolled in while you apply because we don't need to see the grades in those courses. Okay. The only course that has a expiration date, if you want to think about it, is the genetics course. We'd like to see your genetics course within the last 5 years, and that's only because so much has changed in genetics in the last 5 years that if you had taken a genetics course 20 years ago, it would not even be close to reflecting what our current knowledge is. So we want to make sure you're up to date on a genetics course. That's the only one that we would need within the last 5 years. GREs. So we do require GREs, but it's not heavily weighted in our decision making. And in fact, as the admissions committee is reviewing applications, they won't even see the GRE or the GPA scores until the very end. So we really want them to rate you based on your personal statement, your CV, your knowledge of genetic counseling as a profession, how well you write, how well you communicate, your passion for this profession, different experiences that have made you a diverse, wide range person. Those are the kinds of things that we want to see from you up front. And then we do take into account GPA and GRE, but they're not weighted heavily in the quantitative metrics. They're just another piece of who you are. The reason we want to see the GRE scores is because we have to know about your standardized test taking skills. We have to take a boards exam. That's a standardized test. We have to know if you have good standardized test taking skills or not. And if you don't, we want to get some remediation so we can help ensure that you will be able to pass your boards on the first try. So that's the reason we want to see your GRE scores, is really to see are there things that we would need to supplement if you were to be admitted into the program. The GPA, we're just looking to see if somebody can be successful academically. And we will be looking at applications that have GPAs lower than 3.0. We do ask that you send in 2 additional letters of recommendation to support why that GPA perhaps does not reflect your aptitude in coursework and academia. So we will continue to look at applications that don't quite meet the graduate college's GPA 3.0 requirement, but we need some supplemental material as well. What kinds of qualities are we looking for in applicants? Well, this is a brand new program. There's a lot of exciting things that we're doing in this program. There are a lot of really cool activities. You'll get to work with Masters of Respiratory Care students, nurse practitioner students, all online. And we think the way that we're delivering this program is really for the student's experience and for the genetic counseling discipline. So you're not going to be taking a research and statistics class that other graduate students take. You're going to be taking one specifically for genetic counselors. So we're trying to arm you with as much of the knowledge that we can fit into 2 years so that you can go out and be a proficient practitioner in genetic counseling. So in terms of looking for those attributes, we need somebody who's going to be self-motivated. In online programs, you don't go to a classroom and sit around for an hour with your other classmates. You have to access that material, digest that material, learn it all on your own. So you have to be self-motivated. You also have to be responsible. You're going to be working with other members of your team, other members of your cohort, and they're relying on you. So you have to show up on time. You have to show up with your materials ready to go. You have to turn in different components of your assignments as requested. So we're looking for collaborators, people who are good working in teams, people who are responsible. We're also looking for people who are flexible. Our fieldwork model is very different than what other programs do, and we want curious, adventurous people who are willing to go out to areas of the country they've never seen, because we feel like that's an important experience for you to see what it's like to counsel patients from different populations. What kinds of skills would you need in Alaska versus what you'll need in Montana? So we want individuals who are excited about going other places and thinking about getting experiences that are off the beaten path. And because we are new, we are looking for people who are going to be willing to roll with it with us. This is brand new. We don't really have a whole lot we can judge this from other genetic counseling programs, but we think what we're doing is offering a very high quality experience, but there are things that are going to come up that are going to need tweaks. They're going to need adjustments, and so we need people who are flexible and easygoing enough to go with that flow. So we're really excited about what we're building and having a team of students with us to help us continue to improve it and make it better. And then, is there a preferred number of online courses? We would very much like to see that you've taken an online course before, because that speaks to your ability to be successful in online learning. Online learning is different than face-to-face learning. If you haven't taken an online course, that's okay. It's not a requirement, but it would strengthen your application for us to see that you've had some experiences doing it. So there is no minimum number of online courses you have to have. If you have one, that's enough to add to your application. We accept students from all 50 states in the United States. We aren't necessarily accepting international students because of the visa regulations with Homeland Security. There are some exceptions to that. So if you are an international student, I would encourage you to contact the International Student Office. They can tell you which visas online students are able to apply for. But we cannot issue the most common visa for international students. The cost of the program is $56,000. That's for the full 2 years. There are probably some additional costs with the field work, so relocating temporarily for your field work experiences. So we would think at most it's around $60,000, but we'll see what that looks like once we truly have students. We don't have any scholarships available. Again, we're brand new. We'd love to get scholarships, but that's something that we probably have to wait and demonstrate how the students are doing after they've graduated, how they've passed their boards, how they're getting employed. But all students would be eligible for financial aid for the entirety of the 2 years and for the full duration of the program. I'm not sure if there are payment plans available or if that's something that the graduate college would know, but that's probably I'm sure they have something available. And then right now we're looking at taking somewhere between 10 and 12 students for this first cohort. We'd like to get 12, but we have to get permission from our accreditors to do that. So we're in the process of trying to bump it up to 12. All right, any questions? Could all 3 rotations be done in the same city? Yes, potentially they could. For example, here in Idaho, we have 7 different rotation sites, and that would cover the spectrum of prenatal, pediatric, and cancer and adult that you would need. We would encourage you, though, to try to do at least one of those experiences away from Idaho for the reasons that I mentioned, because it really will give you a dynamic perspective for how care is delivered in other places. Okay. Anything else? All right, and then as far as professional networking resources for graduates of the program, we are part of National Society of Genetic Counselor. I think several of us are a member of the American Society of Human Genetics, American College of Medical Genetics and Genomics. These are the large professional societies for genetics. We will have access to all of the jobs that are available through those 3 different organizations. MSGC has a job board which students would have access to. Jobs are plentiful. There are 4 jobs for every graduate currently, and we're anticipating that that's going to grow with the demand for genetic counselors growing in the next couple of years. So finding jobs will not be a challenge, at least in this anticipated next 5 years, because there are many, many jobs out there. Is there any help with job placement? Not financially, but we would certainly be giving you skills throughout the program for professional development, interviewing skills, building your resume, building a portfolio, getting experiences that would make you an attractive candidate to potential employers. Most students these days really have their choice of what kinds of jobs they'd like to go for. There are lots and lots of clinical jobs. There are lots of laboratory and industry jobs. So there's a lot of choices out there. And we would certainly be supportive of the students who are going and looking at different jobs elsewhere, including here in Idaho. We have jobs open in Idaho. We'd love to fill those jobs too. Nothing official with like a program for job placement, because it really isn't an issue for us at this point. All right, well, I think I've covered all of those admissions questions. What do we have next? So this is our contact information. This is the website that I referenced. It has a lot of content on there. I would encourage you to read it and read it carefully. We've had a couple of individuals who have sent us their transcripts. You cannot send your transcripts to me or my address. You have to send them through the Graduate College or the International Relations Studies. So make sure you read carefully. Our deadline is January 15th. That is a hard deadline. All of your materials have to be in by January 15th. If they are not there, we'll consider your application incomplete and we will not review it. Once those applications are received, they will be reviewed by the admissions committee. We will be selecting 48 of those for an interview. All of our interviews are virtual, so we will be setting you up with 4 different interviews with different members of program leadership, faculty, and our admissions committee on one of 4 days in February and March. And then, as I indicated, we would be ranking all of our interview candidates and putting into the match system in mid-April, and we'll get our match list at the end of April. You can follow us on social media. We have Twitter and Facebook, and then we have an email address, geneticcounselingms@boisestate.edu. Direct all of your questions about admissions, curriculum, fieldwork to that email address, and we'll be sure to get back to you as soon as possible. So that's all I have. Stephanie, do you have anything else you want to add?
I just want to say, you were mentioning a little bit about job placements, and I think one of the things that really makes our program unique, besides the online platform, is the amount of intentionality that has been put into the curriculum design, and we have really had so much fortune in being able to attract faculty members from across the country with such great expertise in their areas of specialty, especially because we have an online platform. So two things. One is we have been able to get faculty members who come from all over the country and sometimes from all over the world to teach our help teach our classes, guest lecture, because we don't have to have them in person. So that makes us really unique. And so you're going to have a chance to learn from some of the best experts in the world, who can give the lectures and can be part of your educational experience. So that's really another unique aspect of this program. And then also the other piece, which I think is really fascinating about this program as well, is that we have drawn from the interdisciplinary aspects of Boise State, both internally and externally, in the greater Idaho area, and even nationally. We collaborated with social work department, respiratory care, even the MBA, the Kobe School of Business, the MBA program, and we pulled resources from their departments when we build the curriculum. So you're getting this completely multidisciplinary curriculum coursework that's naturally built in, and you're going to feel flavors of social work and psychology and nursing and respiratory care and business in your coursework as well. So it's kind of the best of all of these worlds. And then when you're doing your field placement, also you're going to get to experience all of these different cultures when you're, maybe like Jennifer was saying, doing one field placement in Alaska, or maybe one in Idaho, one in Nevada. And so it's just this unique ability to have training that's so diverse. And I think that that's something that we feel a lot of pride and excitement about in this program. And that's really unique about the model of this Boise State genetic counseling program. So we're excited to pass that on to our students. And we feel that it's going to benefit this next generation of genetic counselors coming out of this program as well.
Great. Well, I am going to take one last look at the chat box. I don't see any other additional questions. So we are recording this and we will post this so other people will be able to see it, and you'll be able to come back and watch it again if you want to. But we look forward to reviewing your application, and if you have any questions, email us. Thank you for coming.